Gender. It's a topic that has been at the top of mind for a whole lot of people in recent years. My next guest is somebody who has experienced it. She is now fighting the good fight to try to make everybody aware of the dangers, the risks, the destructive elements of what she calls the gender medical industrial complex. We are very blessed to have Chloe Cole joining us today. Chloe, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I hope you are too.
I'm doing fantastic. I found out that you are younger than two of my children. You are 20 years old, and that to me just blows me away because your presence. And I'm not kissing up to the guest here. This is my honest opinion. Your presence is so far above and beyond your age. I think that is a testament to your mission and perhaps to the blessings that you have received. But for my audience, please, if you would, tell us about you. Take as long as you need. I'm sure most of my audience is very well aware of your story, but those who aren't, they need to hear it. So take us away. Tell us about Chloe.
So, I am an advocate for the rights of children, particularly in the medical space, and the rights of parents and their authority and understanding and love over their children. Mostly hailing from my own experiences as a detransitioner, which is somebody who went through the process of a medical gender transition and came back out of it and returned to their identity as their birth sex. And I personally went through the process. I went through this process while I was still a child, between the ages of 12 to 16 years old. So I went through, I was put on puberty blocking medication, I was put on cross sex hormones, and I eventually underwent a double mastectomy to remove my breasts to try and masculinize me. And at 16 years old, I came out of that decision. And for the past, I would say 3 years, I have been speaking about not only my own experiences, but also connecting to other detransitioners as well, other families, other children, other young men and women who have been harmed by the system, and working with legislation to protect children from these treatments ever happening to them ever again.
An amazing work. You were at the White House recently, weren't you?
I was. I recently had the pleasure of meeting Caroline Levitt as well as some other congressmen and women. And I have been meaning to work with the Trump administration on this issue for a while because, as it is right now, this is something that is a state by state issue. But the problem with that is many other states, such as my own home state of California, are going further and further and further in the opposite direction of progress on this issue. And they're facilitating the further abuse of children and children being ripped away from the custody of their parents and their families, in the name of gender affirming care. But I don't believe that any child or any family is going to be safe into the United States until this is completely eradicated from all 50 states and federally.
Yes, and it is a fight that's going to have to take place, as you said, at the state level first, because there's going to be challenges. We're talking about probably years, even with if we have complete control over the House and the Senate. I'm talking 60 senators, complete control over the House. There's still going to be legal challenges that will take it further. We have to get the states going. I agree with you wholeheartedly there. I too am out here stuck in California, and we are in a state that is loaded with contradictions. You'd recently noted in a video that we're going to get to here in a bit, but you recently noted that out here in California, you need IDs and parental consent to get pretty much anything. You can't even go into a tanning booth or a tanning salon. Is that correct?
Right.
If you're a minor, and yet you can start to transition. You can get hormones. You can do all sorts of things. Tell us, you've seen obviously here in California, but also in other states. You say that things are heading in the wrong direction. Elaborate on that. What's happening here and in other states?
Well, many states, this systematic abuse of children in our medical system and allowing them to go down this path that is not only developmentally destructive, but I think adult in nature, it is inherently sexual. It affects your sexual development and the way that you experience it on a physiological and emotional level. Um, Certain states like California have also become sanctuary states of sorts, where children from other states can run off either with a parent or on their own, in search of transitioning if either one of their parents doesn't approve. And these states will often ignore the custody laws and will not go into investigations for these other states.
Hmm.
It's completely wrong, and I personally believe that it's unconstitutional as well.
Oh, absolutely. And there's a see. Here's the thing, and this is the part that I think oftentimes gets missed, is that we have not only do we have the science on our side, we have the law on our side. We just need people to step up and be willing to take those laws on and to address it. Because in my humble, I'm not an attorney, I'm not a doctor, I'm just a humble show host. But my understanding and talking to people knowledgeable about all of this says that if if we would just fight the political fight, fight the cultural fight, that we can win, and it's going to take people like you and perhaps people in my audience to pick up that fight and to keep going down the road that you're on. Now, the recent video that I had referenced, and it's what brought you to top of mind, was a video that was done by Live Action. They did a I call it sort of like a sting, but it wasn't really a sting. They were just asking questions. They had somebody who was posing as a 16-year-old girl calling various Planned Parenthoods and asking questions about how easy it would be for them to transition. Now, you took that video and then you gave your commentary on what was happening, and it was very compelling. And again, after the interview, I'll play that for the audience so that they'll be able to see it. I've already actually played a couple days ago. I played the original video, but I want to hear your perspective on it. So, but go ahead and give us a little bit from what we've learned about Planned Parenthood, Margaret Sanger, everything that's happening. They have gone, I hate to use the word, but they have sort of transitioned to be basically only about abortion, and now they're trying to become the leader or one of the top two or three in the nation when it comes to transitioning children. Tell us what you've learned.
Right. So Planned Parenthood began, and really the entire birth control and abortion movement began with eugenics in mind. Margaret Sanger was the person who founded it, and she was a very prominent eugenicist in her time. And she primarily advocated for the eradication of Black people, of those who had developmental disabilities or came from low income backgrounds from the population through the marketing of these birth control treatments and of killing their unborn children. And unfortunately, in those communities, these clinics and these treatments are still very proliferative. So her ideology still lives on. And I think that in the same vein of those communities of people being abused, Planned Parenthood is now profiting off of another vulnerable community of young people who grew up experiencing an identity crisis, eventually for them forming into feelings of distress around their sex and the sex parts of their bodies. And they're going all into this. They've not only become the single greatest provider of abortions and birth control in the United States, they also have become one of the largest providers of these gender services as well. And as we recently learned with this video, they provide these treatments to minors at least 16 years of age. And there's so much at stake when you provide these treatments to children because they're developmentally dangerous. They completely throw off your sexual, your reproductive, your physical development, and we have no idea how it affects cognitive, emotional, and identity development in the long term for kids. We already know that it's dangerous for adults, and it appears that the younger that you go with these treatments, the drugs, and eventually the surgeries, the more dangerous it becomes. I think that what they're doing is they started with crimes against humanity, and they are going deeper and deeper and deeper into criminality.
It's not enough to just kill preborn babies. Now they have to take the ones that were able to survive and try to destroy their lives.
And the
Here's
ones who are
a
struggling with what is a difficult part of growing up for everybody. Just growing a lot of what these children are experiencing. Sure, many of them might have comorbid mental health issues. Many of them might be sexually traumatized or have some sort of familial trauma. But a lot of what they're grappling with is also just normal distress that comes with puberty and your body and everything in your life changing. And they're
no,
capitalizing off of that.
absolutely. There's even if we take out trauma, okay, if we just look at just growing up in today's world with so much information, so much input, both the emotional as well as the physiological stress upon children can be confusing. I mean, it can take them in the wrong direction. Quick story. I had a young a friend when I was in grade school, okay, which was a long time ago, I'm willing to admit. But this young man, well, he was a kid, and he was one of my best friends. And I remember thinking it was kind of odd because he played with dolls, and we're talking like 6, 7 years old, and it was kind of odd, but didn't think too much of it. And as time went on, and yes, he started showing a little bit more femininity. He was clearly somebody who I think if he were growing up today, he would be a prime candidate for teachers or counselors or even parents, perhaps to start to think, oh well, maybe he's experiencing, maybe he's confused, maybe he needs to be transitioned. I looked him up. This is about, I don't know, 3 or 4 months ago. Looked him up on Facebook. Just man's man, like lumberjack dude, married, kids, just totally dude, male, but I would think that if he had been growing up today, they would try to push him in that direction based upon some of his tendencies when he was a child. And that's a true story. So, not that I tell lies, I'm just saying that
I,
people will say, oh, that's a convenient story for this. No, I've told that story before. That's real stuff. So, anyway,
I
so
mean,
let me ask you.
a lot of these children are just they're experiencing gender nonconforming behaviors. Many of them are tomboys. Many of
Sure.
them are boys who might grow up being more feminine, but otherwise will grow up perfectly normally if you don't intervene with them,
Sure.
if you don't do any of the physical interventions. Most of these children will either tend to grow out of these behaviors or grow out of this distress. And that's been shown by, I think, one of the longest term studies that was done on children who are experiencing gender related distress. Most of them would, I think upwards of 90% of them would end up reintegrating with their identities with their bodies, with their identities as their birth sex. And I mean, I think that goes to show that this is not the cure at all for for this distress that these children are experiencing. And they may not. What was also shown in this investigation was that, I mean, one of the phone operators admitted that you don't even need a mental health evaluation
Right.
to get a prescription for hormones. All you need is to have a single appointment with the doctor. You don't need to have any evidence of having been seen by a psychologist or even a referral from one. So they're not even investigating what might be going to these feelings for these kids, and yet they're allowing them to make a lifelong decision based off of that and not giving them the chance to grow up.
Absolutely. Now your focus, and you said a few words there that caught my attention. In most, in some, and so correct me if I'm wrong, but your perspective is not necessarily against transitioning as a whole. It's about transitioning as children. If somebody grows up, they're 22 years old, they decide that they want to transition. Should that be, in your opinion, should that be allowed?
I mean, I think that for a doctor to perform these treatments on anybody, regardless of their age, whether they are children, whether they are adults, I think that is cruel. I don't believe that this is medicine at all. I think that is completely fraudulent. And I mean, there is no such thing as a successful transition because you cannot actually become a member of the opposite sex. It doesn't matter what drugs you take. It doesn't matter what surgeries you get or what parts of your body get put on or taken off or how you look. These patients are never actually going to become men or women. But that being said, obviously with children, there is an element of it being a developmental danger. So we need to focus on children first and we need to protect them first. But I think that I don't believe that a total ban across all ages would be possible or practical. And you can't prevent every single adult from making dangerous decisions in their lives.
Sure.
But I think that even the adults are often from very vulnerable populations of people who are traumatized or have other mental health or psychiatric conditions. And the medical community is not really paying any mind to that at all. And there needs to be a lot more protections and a lot more gatekeeping.
So you don't see any scenario where somebody, an adult, obviously with children, very clear, crystal clear to me. This just should be a no-brainer, and I consider it to be child abuse. But you don't see any scenario where adults should be able to. And I guess the easiest way to put this, I'm trying to steer this a little bit into a biblical perspective. You believe that God created men as men, women as women, and that's how it is. Is that a fair assessment of your perspective?
Absolutely. I think that we are created male and female in God's image, and that our science reflects that.
Yeah, we can't have reproduction if everybody's transitioning. And I'm chuckling. I'm not trying to make light of the situation. I really don't. But it is one of those scenarios where children are victims, and when they are allowed to go through this, when they're persuaded in many cases to go through it, when they're counseled by doctors or counselors to go through this, that I consider to be child abuse. When you get into the adult era, the adult age, now all of a sudden I think that it does fall into a level of mental illness, and something that we recognized in the past, and that for whatever reason we no longer recognize. You are part of various organizations. You've talked about some of your goals, wanting to work with the White House, wanting to work with on both state as well as federal legislation. What else are you doing? Because this is who you've become. And I know that I'm sure you have plenty of other things that you do. But when people think of Chloe Cole, they think of trying to steer this nation, to protect children and steer this nation in the right direction when it comes to gender dysphoria. What are you involved with now? Are there any plans for the future? Anything that you want to that you're on the horizon that maybe people don't know about? Maybe they do know about. What's the future look like for Chloe Cole?
So right now, I mean, for a lot of the 3 years that I've been working in this space, I have been focused primarily on legislation, but I also have a lawsuit of my own that I filed against my healthcare providers, against my doctors, who perform these treatments on me, in hopes that I can not only hold them accountable, but also make it so that any doctor who is even thinking about doing this to children ever again is scared out of doing so. They're shown the stakes of what could happen if they continue to do so. And I also speak to communities across the U.S. and abroad. I have spoken at various churches, and some of my favorite events have been the ones at colleges where I table on campus or where I give lectures, and I get to actually interface with students and with people my age, which, while I think it's extremely important to work on this issue on a legislative and broader level, it's something that primarily affects my generation and the younger generations. And it's not just older adults and legislators who need to be reached with by this message. It's people my age who may be struggling with their sense of identity around their sex, or are going through detransition, or are struggling with this either at school, or seeing this in their own families or with their friend groups, and want to get involved but aren't really sure what to do about it. I want to eventually empower my generation in dealing not only with this issue, but also with what I think is a broader identity crisis that has happened with the rise of the internet and with the loss of Christian and family values in our country.
Gotcha. That's a great answer. So, what is the next step? We know that I always see, whether it's abortion or dealing with the transing of children, transgender issues in general. I've always seen this as you've got your faith based attacks. We have to fight on that front. We have to fight on the cultural front, and we have to fight on the political front, the legislative front. If you had to pick one where you're like, this is the one that we've got to go after immediately, this is step one, to try to really bring this to an end. Where do you think, where do we hit first?
That's a that's a good question, because I think that all of those are equally important as each other. And without one, we won't be able to defeat this in full. But I think the first step probably would be renewing our nation and its faith, because it's we once were a country that was centered around our churches and the communities around that. And with the loss of those values, I think everything in our country has begun to fall apart. Not just individuals, but also communities, our families, and entire institutions have just begun to crumble. And if we want to rebuild ourselves, we have to start with our faith first, and everything else will follow.
Very good. Well, then, quick question, and you don't have to answer this if you're not comfortable. What do you think of the new pope?
Uh, well, I don't know. I'm a Protestant myself, so it's not really something that like personally pertains to me, but seems like a cool guy. It's kind of cool to it feels like an American win to have the first
I
American
know,
pope,
right?
you know? And
How did
just
this
some
even happen?
I would say just some dude from Chicago, but he's not just some dude. Like he's the pope now, you know?
Yep, yep, exactly.
We get a little
All
piece of
right.
ourselves in the Vatican.
So I want to ask you one more question. But before I do, I want, how do people reach out to you? Are you doing speaking engagements? Can they, is there a place where they can donate? Yeah, I know that as far as on X, that's where I communicate with you and I retweet a bunch of your stuff. It's Chu Cole, CHOOO,
Yep, it's three
COL,
O's.
yeah, three O's, COLE. So, and I'll put a link to her X
Yep,
down in the description. But
yep.
where else can people find you?
I'm on X. I'm on Instagram. I'm also on YouTube as well. And I'm starting to do more video content of my own, including I've been doing an interview series of other detransitioners, and I recently interviewed
Really?
a parent of a detransitioner. So that will be on my channel soon. And I am also doing speaking events. So I have an inquiries email in my bio and all of those that you can reach out to if you're interested. And I'm also doing, I guess you'd say, a tour of different colleges across the country for. I'm sure it'll probably go on for a few more years. So if I'm ever in your
Really
area, if
will.
I'm ever in your community, then come show up.
That's perfect. That's perfect. All right. My final question for you is this is this a fight for everyone? And here's what I'm asking. It's a challenging question, but I'm sure you'll be able to answer it. In other words, like you've been through this. You've been a victim of this. You have gone down to the depths. You've come back up. You're detransitioning. You're fighting the good fight. For some other people, maybe they're not parents, maybe they're whatever. There may not be as many, and we've seen this in the abortion arena. We've seen this in other arenas where people are just like, you know what? It's just like trying to get an 18-year-old to fight for Social Security. They don't really care until they're about 40ish, right? Well, how do we get, and because I'm on your side, and I am in the older generation, I'm on your side. I fight this every single day with everything that I put out there. I put out at least a little bit of content about the gender dysphoria issue, as the gender medical industrial complex, trying to protect the children and trying to bring a more faith driven light to an understanding of gender. How do we get other people of my generation to fight? How do we get them to listen to you? What is the best path forward for us to be able to fight this scourge on our nation?
I mean, I think this fight begins with just normal, everyday people. I didn't start out as a public speaker. I was barely out of high school when I first started to speak out. And even before that, it started for me with everyday conversations that I would have with people around me, my parents, my family, my friends, and eventually reaching out to and connecting with other people who have had similar experiences or similar feelings as me, challenging myself and challenging other people by who may not have who may not known before or who may feel very differently about the subjects. And you don't have to be a public speaker in order to effect change on this issue. I think that starts in these conversations that we have with the people around us. It starts on a very small scale. But I think that everybody can get involved on a larger level. Many of the people who I have fought alongside on this front were once just normal doctors, teachers, parents who end up becoming whistleblowers, legislators, and activists. And it, I think the best thing that you can do is to start having those conversations, no matter how difficult, how awkward they may be at first, and then just seeing where it's going to take you and trusting the process.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Chloe Cole, may God bless you, and may He make your endeavors just shine. Because I think that you're a superstar, and I think that the rest of the world is going to realize this very soon. Hopefully, we'll see you spending more time in the White House. I'd love to see you working directly with the Trump administration and perhaps even the next administration and beyond to bring this issue to the forefront. Chloe Cole, thank you so much for being on the JD
And
Rucker
thank
Show.
you.